Donald Trump has scored a legal victory in Pennsylvania. A judge has sided with the Trump campaign, saying the Secretary of State had no right to alter a deadline by which people who needed to prove their identification for some ballots would be allowed to do so. Long story short, many ballots will now not be counted. I don't have the official numbers, but this goes back to an election day lawsuit when Trump sued Pennsylvania because they were effectively allowing some voters to cure their ballots. If there was an issue with a mail-in ballot, they were actually contacting voters and telling them you can provide information, fix this ballot by a certain deadline. Trump has won this fight, albeit it's probably not enough yet. But Trump is promising there's going to be many more results in the coming week. I got to be honest, I'm not entirely confident. Now, I understand, look, my opinion on this matter is irrelevant. It's going to play out in the courts, and I'm not a lawyer or a judge, but it certainly sounds to me like we are getting to a point where this just isn't going to be enough. Many lawyers have said straight up, Trump needs 3 Hail Mary passes to pull this off. They called Arizona for Joe Biden. Donald Trump is suing in many different states. And this lawsuit actually might be good news for him, but I got to say, in my opinion, we are just ever inching closer to certification that will favor Joe Biden, who will end up the actual president-elect. To be fair, so long as this election is disputed, and Trump is going through the process, we should wait until we get to the actual electoral vote on December 12th before Joe Biden starts acting like he actually is the president-elect. I understand there's a tradition where we just go through the process, but we're not quite there. Now, this lawsuit is really, really good news for Trump because this is not a Supreme Court ruling. It's a Pennsylvania court ruling. It may not be enough. I just told you my thoughts on the matter. However, this ruling may actually be some kind of precedent that the Secretary of State, the government of Pennsylvania, doesn't have the right to arbitrarily change these rules at the last minute. Some people have said, why is Trump suing after the fact? You can't do this. We got one legal expert who said Trump trying to challenge these ballots in many different states under the 14th Amendment makes no sense because he should have sued beforehand. That guy's wrong. Far be it from me to question the expertise of a legal scholar. But Donald Trump is suing because they sued on Election Day because the Pennsylvania Secretary of State was allowing people to cure their ballots in certain areas and not in others. That may actually create a very serious problem. Thus, Trump has this victory. Now, I don't know if these are the exact. I've got a couple stories here about these lawsuits, and it's really hard to track because there are so many. But I'm going to try and go through this and break down the current victory for Donald Trump, whether or not it actually will bring him about to this actual electoral win in the long run. I don't know. And I have a story saying it ain't going to happen. But Lincoln Project and leftist activists are going after the law firms that are helping Donald Trump in this matter or just representing him. And it's kind of weird. Why would you dox and target and harass clientele for a law firm unless you weren't so confident or unless this isn't actually about what's true and right? It's about just winning and gaining power. And that's certainly what Trump's opponents are actually doing. And in the media, they're lying. And it's really weird. To be fair, Donald Trump is not helping so much, or maybe it's part of his plan when he puts out, these all caps tweets about voter fraud and these computer systems. And that's one of the other big stories from today. Donald Trump tweeting that millions of votes were taken from him and given to Joe Biden based on a report from One American News, which these things are just ridiculously difficult, if not impossible, to actually verify. But Trump is certainly saying it. So the narrative now in the mainstream press is that Trump is focused on fraud. But if you look at the actual legal challenges coming from the lawyers, it's an entirely different story. Maybe it's on purpose from, one side or the other to distract people while Trump actually challenges ballots under the 14th Amendment. The ACLU is certainly taking this seriously, saying that they are filing a suit to stop Trump from disqualifying hundreds of thousands of votes. That's the real battle. And that's why I'm not leading this video with Trump claims Dominion stealing votes, because it's all a distraction. The real battle is under the 14th Amendment, the Constitution, the process, whether or not the Secretary of State was violating the law and going against the wishes of the state legislature. It's going to be very, very different than what we're seeing on the surface level in the media. So let me try and break this down for you to the best of my abilities. And I'll admit it is quite difficult. But the first story is that a court has ruled in favor of the Trump campaign. Just a small legal victory so far. We'll see how things play out. But before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate. If you'd like to support my work, there are many ways you can give. I got a P.O. box if you want to send me some stuff. But the best thing you can do is share this video. If you think this information is really important, if you think I'm doing a good job, sharing the video really does help me grow my channel and sustain my business. But don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let's read. Fox News reports Pennsylvania court, Secretary of State lacked authority to change deadline 2 days before Election Day. Judge ruled ballots that were previously set aside should not be counted. A Pennsylvania judge ruled in favor of the Trump campaign Thursday, ordering that the state may not count ballots where the voters needed to provide proof of identification and failed to do so by November 9th. State law said that voters have until 6 days after the election, this year that was November 9th, to cure problems regarding a lack of proof of identification. After the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that mail-in ballots could be accepted 3 days after election. Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar submitted guidance that said proof of identification could be provided up until the 12th, which is 6 days after the ballot acceptance deadline. That guidance was issued 2 days before the election. Quote, the court concludes that respondent Kathy Boockvar, in her official capacity as Secretary of the Commonwealth, lacked statutory authority to issue the November 1st, 2020 guidance to respondents' County Board of Elections insofar as the guidance purported to change the deadline for certain electors to verify proof of identification, Judge Mary Hannah Leavitt said in a court order. This was in line with the Trump campaign's argument, which was that there was no basis in the state's law to extend the identification deadline and that Boockvar did not have the power to unilaterally change it. So, good news for Trump. The court had previously ordered that all ballots where voters provided proof of identification between the 10th and the 12th should be segregated until a ruling was issued determining what should be done with them. On Thursday, Leavitt ruled those ballots shall not be counted. This is one of several legal challenges the Trump campaign is bringing in Pennsylvania. On Friday, they are scheduled to have a hearing over thousands of ballots that they claim were improperly counted despite lacking required information. Additionally, the campaign awaits action from the Supreme Court regarding whether the Pennsylvania Supreme Court acted properly in granting the 3-day extension for accepting mail-in ballots. Now, the important thing to understand is that Joe Biden has a lead in Pennsylvania, regardless of whether or not they count ballots that came in after November 3rd, Election Day. And this is where the Veritas story comes into play. Project Veritas has a whistleblower, more than one, from the United States Postal Service alleging backdating was going on. This means that when they went out and collected a ballot after the deadline, somebody put the previous date so that it looked valid. Now, here's the challenge. This witness was sitting down in a meeting with a federal agent and then was being questioned on whether or not he remembered exactly what was said. Now, many people on the right have said the FBI agent, the federal agent, a USPS agent, not FBI agent, was using pressure tactics to manipulate and make this Richard Hopkins, this whistleblower, question his own memory. But he doubled down and said, I did not recant. And it's very strange. The media pumped out a story saying he did, because this is the real challenge. Even if Donald Trump wins in Pennsylvania and they say you can't count ballots after November 3rd, your extension is unjust. And it looks like Trump's on track to win that argument. They'll just say, but don't worry, all of these other ballots, they came in on the 3rd. They were postmarked by the 3rd. Thus, they're all okay. There's a lot of legal challenges here. Trump may even challenge whether or not ballots postmarked by the 3rd are even acceptable to be counted after the 3rd, because that may create a parallel track, a violation of the 14th Amendment, which is another big play in Donald Trump's legal arsenal. I have to admit, I'm reading the news all day, every day, and as time goes on, it's starting to look more and more like Trump is not winning this. However, we're still a long ways away from knowing for sure. And just because Trump is, in the dip right now doesn't mean he can't pull out. But I'm telling you, I really do think we're headed towards a Joe Biden electoral victory. Trump has many paths to victory. As much as the mainstream media, for the most part, is saying there isn't one. Ignore the right-wing media echo chamber. There's no path for Trump. We're starting to now see The Atlantic and Vox.com both say, okay, well, Trump does have a way to win. He actually has several ways to win. They're unorthodox, might be bad for the country in the long run. They're legal challenges, but Trump absolutely can still win. Like I said for the millionth time, I'm not entirely confident. But if Trump can win under at the Supreme Court level, citing an equal protection clause violation, meaning if you have one ballot that is allowed to be brought in after Election Day, but in-person ballots must be counted on Election Day. Well, that's not treating ballots equally. There's many arguments they have under the 14th that may get many ballots disqualified. Now, The Atlantic, in an op-ed, a professor of law said, if Trump succeeds in this argument, and it seems ludicrous, then he's going to nullify mail-in ballots across the entire country. Now, that seems far-fetched, right? But listen, just because you're waiting for lightning to strike doesn't mean it can't. And that's the point. That's why I say I don't see it personally working out, but I'm not a lawyer. And I just want to make sure you know it exists. And the media is telling us it exists. Now, the lawsuit we just read about, the Just the News has a story going back to November 4th, which I believe may be the same lawsuit, but honestly, there are so many suits that could be slightly different. This one, this article goes into a bit more detail explaining what was wrong with these ballots. And the most important thing is that they were saying, well, actually, let me read it. They say, a lawsuit filed on Election Day against the Pennsylvania Secretary of State alleges that a last-minute rule change to the state's ballot counting process is privileging some voters over others and potentially slanting the outcome of the election. The suit, filed by 2 Pennsylvania politicians and several of the state's voters, so this is a different lawsuit, argues that Secretary of the Commonwealth Kathy Boockvar's guidance issued just hours before the election is in clear violation of the law. Pennsylvania state law does not allow voters the opportunity to cure perceived defects in a timely manner. Does not allow. The state Supreme Court ruled last month. The state also forbids election workers from sharing any details on voters' ballots from pre-canvass meetings. Nevertheless, on Monday, Boockvar directed officials with County Board of Elections to provide information to a party and candidate representatives during the pre-canvass that identifies the voters whose ballots have been rejected so that the voters can be notified and the ballots can be cured. The complaint notes that multiple Pennsylvania counties have refused to accept Boockvar's guidance because it is in contravention of the election code. As a result, the guidance is allowing only certain voters to cure their defects. This is not the same lawsuit as the one I just read you, but this is extremely important. Do not count out Donald Trump just yet. After everything I just said, I'm still recognizing this. What they're saying right here sounds very similar to Bush v. Gore, that different counties were treating the ballots differently, and thus you had a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. If some counties were allowing curing and others weren't, based on a unilateral declaration by the Secretary of State in violation of the Supreme Court's order, boy, do we have a problem. A very serious problem. Because it sounds like you've created preferential treatment for some counties. And it sounds like you acted in violation of a court order. I don't know how you handle this one. I don't know what the judges are going to say in this. We'll see how things end up playing out. But I'll tell you, when you got a Supreme Court, a legislature, and a Secretary of State, when you have 3 different branches fighting each other, disagreeing, and ignoring each other's, orders or laws, well, it sounds like the rule of law is breaking down almost, doesn't it? How can we function when one branch overrules a court order because they feel like they can? I can only imagine that these ballots may be disqualified. And if they're not, then Donald Trump, as he's already doing, will likely make it to a federal lawsuit, maybe to a Supreme Court ruling that Pennsylvania treated their ballots differently in different counties. And thus, we don't have certifiable results. As of right now, many states have already certified their election results, but none of the key swing states so far. So it's like Delaware and, South Dakota have already. Wyoming, I think Wyoming may have, I'm not entirely sure, but many states already have. The issue is that, I got to tell you, I'm worried that they might actually agree with Trump. And what I mean is, what I'm worried is it's not that they agree with it. If they agree with Trump, good for Trump. He's within his legal rights. I'm worried that it will result in massive destabilization. And I'm worried that there's no clean way out of this. Because if we can plainly see that they were treating some ballots differently to others and privileging some people, no one's going to accept it. No Trump supporter is going to accept that was okay. And the same is true for absentee ballots and mail-in votes. It was privileging certain people over others. But if a court rules you can't do that, the left is going to say you're disqualifying legit and legal votes. And now we can see, as the left has already said over and over again, count every vote. Oh, well, too bad. Pennsylvania court has ruled those that were being cured between the 10th and the 12th will not be counted. The left is going to say, no, it's not fair. We must count every ballot. I tell you, the media is going to say over and over again, Trump is losing. Don't believe them. OK, let me clarify. Like I'm trying to tell you this. Trump has a clear path. He has several, actually. There are outlets like Vox and The Atlantic saying, yeah, he could pull it off, but it's a big long shot. I agree with that assessment. I've asked a lawyer. It sounds like a long shot, but possible. But when you see these stories that say President-elect Joe Biden, when they say Trump lost, it's over, that's not true. Right now, what we are going through is the normal legal process for certifying an election and determining who the next president will be. We're just so used to this uniparty, Democrats and Republicans just shaking hands and waving and saying better luck next time, that we don't know what it's actually like to have a real election in this country. Like I mentioned this on the IRL podcast last night. Aaron Burr shot and killed Alexander Hamilton. We used to have very serious contested politics in this country. And today, we are going through the motions as the Constitution requires. For the media to come out and say, Trump has no proof, Trump is searching for fraud, and Joe Biden won, it's over. That is freaky. It's freaky. It's partisanship. They're attempting to manipulate. You've got to wade through this stuff and seek out the real information. Listen. I'm not telling you that I think Donald Trump is going to win. I'm telling you that there are some outlets that are being honest and saying there is, a legitimate legal path to victory for Trump. But I'm not telling you what the probability is, okay? Because I don't know. I'm telling you that I think, quite honestly, it's very, very likely it's going to be Joe Biden. But again, I'm not entirely sure. But let me tell you what those on the left are actually doing. They're targeting the lawyers representing Trump in a push to challenge the election. Now, that is not fair, in my opinion. That is not how this process is supposed to go. But that's exactly what they're doing. The Lincoln Project published the phone numbers and the emails of lawyers working with Trump, sending a harassment wave at them to try and disrupt their ability to do their jobs, as is their legal right, as is Trump's legal right, and is the standard process for what we're supposed to be doing with the Constitution. It's how we're supposed to be moving through this. Instead, they've already begun to resort to dirty tactics. So let me just say, you can claim that Trump has few legal victories. You can say that, Trump can't even prove fraud. It's a misrepresentation. They're lying. You can play the media game all day and night. You can say whatever you want. Fine. But Donald Trump's legal tactics are legal and normal, and he's allowed. It's far from a coup. What they're doing now, manipulation and lies and targeting his lawyers, are horrifying, unethical, amoral, dirty tricks. Let me show you this from the AP. During a Pennsylvania court hearing this week on one of the many election lawsuits brought by President Donald Trump, a judge asked a campaign lawyer whether he had found any signs of fraud from among the 592 ballots challenged. The answer was no. Accusing people of fraud is a pretty big step, said the lawyer, Jonathan Goldstein. We're all just trying to get the election done. Trump has not been so cautious, insisting without evidence the election was stolen from him, even when election officials nationwide from both parties say there has been no conspiracy. Do you see what the AP just did there? I'm impressed. Like the manipulation technique. First, Donald Trump's lawsuit over 592 ballots in this particular instance is not about fraud. It's about cured ballots, misidentification, and impropriety. Notably that many of these ballots didn't have addresses on them, thus they are disqualified. So when a judge said, "Are you implying there's fraud?" the lawyer said, "No. This is about the legal code, the election code, and whether or not these ballots count." The AP is using this to manipulate you into thinking that Trump's lawyers are saying one thing while Trump is doing another. No, Trump has alleged fraud. Rudy Giuliani is alleging fraud. Rudy Giuliani also represents Donald Trump. But in this one case, it's not about fraud. In the Pennsylvania case Trump won, not about fraud. Impropriety. Trump has many lawsuits. This is a manipulation. Saying Trump has not been so cautious, insisting without evidence, that's not true at all. Rudy Giuliani says, I have never seen an election case with half this evidence of fraud, even noting that Giuliani said, this is from Just the News. Giuliani said that the Trump campaign legal team has an affidavit in the Michigan case from someone who worked for Dominion, who said that 100,000 ballots were brought in at 4 a.m. that were all Biden ballots, not a single Trump vote. The Dominion staffer is someone who works for the voting machine. So this is not a poll watcher. This is someone who actually works on the voting machine saying to Giuliani. Now, maybe Giuliani is not telling the truth. We'll figure out in court. There have been many accusations and claims that have been made that have turned out to have been wrong already. That's true. Trump has already had many cases thrown out. But what Trump is doing is he's firing off in every direction to try and win this fight. Now, let me tell you, because people are already saying, why is Trump accepting the results of the Republican, Senate races and House races, but not the presidency? First and foremost, it's about trying to win. Trump's not going to sue New York for a recount. New York is going to Joe Biden. But he's going to go after the key swing states where things are very close because Trump is trying to win. But Trump accepted the results in 2016. That's right, because he won and Hillary Clinton didn't contest it. And now that Trump is not projected to win, he is fighting it. This is just how the legal process works. And what I'm saying is, I'm not going to pretend that Donald Trump is a man of utmost honor and integrity saying, well, I said this last time. No, Trump wants to win. Trump is a fighter who wants to win. End of story. You can criticize him for it. Please do so. I'm not defending it. I'm saying Trump has said, if it's going to be for me, I'll take it. And if it's not, I will fight to win. Congratulations. You found someone who is a cutthroat business person. Surprise, surprise, Trump became a billionaire. He'll accept every shortcut for himself and challenge it when anyone else goes for it. What do you think was going to happen with someone like Donald Trump? He's not going to give up. But for the AP to say there's no evidence, for all these outlets to claim this, actually, in my opinion, kind of freaky. Kind of freaky. It's a manipulation. From Just the News, multiple Michigan residents swear they witnessed widespread voter fraud in Detroit. Early witnesses who signed affidavits range from a longtime city worker to a former assistant attorney general. Now, I can say, I've looked into some of these claims, they appear to not be correct. In many instances where people are claiming dead people voted, we've already had rebuttals that sometimes people have the same names and sometimes there are clerical errors. I can accept that. But what I can't accept is 35 to 100 clerical errors all in the same place. In my opinion, that's smoke. And now we're asking, is there fire? But I'm not going to pretend like these things can't be explained away. The issue here, and I'll tell you what I am not a fan of, people coming out with these government conspiracy ideas, talking about, widespread conspiracy, mathematical analysis. I'm like, hold on to all that. Okay, maybe. Fine. It's not helping. Okay. We have clear and identifiable claims. We can work through these things. Okay. We'll go. You tell me you've got these statistical anomalies. I heard you. I hear about Benford's law. I hear about these things. And I say, interesting. It doesn't prove anything, though. It's just interesting. A grain of sand in a potential heap. Multiple residents swearing voter fraud. Here we go. But there's one thing you really got to understand about this stuff. First of all, I don't think fraud is the appropriate argument for Donald Trump to win. Trump is likely going to win on process, impropriety, and process failure. That's his best path to victory. Fraud may be a distraction, but it's also very hard to prove. And when you have 328 million people, 208 million registered voters, and 150 people voting, you will absolutely find failure rates. You will find people cheating. The question is, was it enough? And were there targeted and directed instances of fraud? I do not believe fraud is the issue. I don't. I'm sorry. I believe that the bigger picture is going to be, did the state of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada act improperly with how they carried out their elections? And if they did, we have a very serious problem. And no, I'm not just going to say, well, Joe Biden should win for the sake of civility. If the elections were screwed up and the courts decide, well, then I don't think we can accept those results. And therein lies the bigger picture. Will Donald Trump be able to pull this off, pointing out impropriety and thus negating some of the states Joe Biden needs to actually win? It is within the realm of possibility. But as we've heard from many legal experts, It's a Hail Mary. It's 3. CNBC says, what if Trump never concedes? The Constitution will end his term, conservative lawyer John Yoo says. John Yoo says, Trump has the right to mount legal challenges, but we should be clear that these are Hail Mary passes, said John Yoo, a former legal advisor to the George W. Bush administration. Several lawsuits by the Trump admin are underway in 6 battleground states that Democratic President-elect Joe Biden won closely. One challenge has successfully triggered a full recount in Georgia, where Biden led by 14,000 of nearly 5 million votes cast and 99% of the expected vote counted. They're doing a full hand recount. That's really good news for Trump because and Trump supporters. Now, this is where I say we don't need to talk about these mathematical manipulations, these conspiracy things. I tell you this, if they exist, this is how you find them. Not by alleging a grand conspiracy, but by straight up saying we had a glitch, we had an improper result, we call for a recount, and we want a full audit. The audit is where Trump will find success if there's fraud, and the courts is where Trump will find success if there was impropriety. My opinion, as I've stated 50 billion times, and to which many, diehard Trump supporters are upset with, is that I think we are inching closer and closer to a Joe Biden presidency. I'm not happy about it. I think Joe Biden's awful. He's already stacking up his transition team with lobbyists and corporate interests. Surprise, surprise. He's going to undo executive orders that Trump made that were good. And he's probably going to get us back involved in the Middle East in no time. So yeah, not happy. But Trump is fighting a massively uphill battle. In fact, I'll tell you this. Trump is on an inverted mountainside, climbing his way up. Can he do it? Let me tell you. You count Donald Trump out, you will regret it because Trump is a fighter. He doesn't give up. And that's clear based on what we're seeing. The media will tell you, oh, Trump's real plan is to start a news network. They said it last time. Trump never wanted to win anyway. I'm telling you, the guy is fighting this and he's got a path. John Yoo didn't say he's going to lose. He said they're Hail Marys. Well, many of you probably watch football. You see a Hail Mary pass, make it. You've seen it. You say, wow, I can't believe he pulled that one off. It may be Trump this time. We'll see how things play out. But let me remind you, Donald Trump appointed Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, 2 people who helped advise the Bush campaign during Bush v. Gore. And John Roberts, also on the Supreme Court, did as well. And then 3 years later, Roberts got a federal appointment. 2 years after that, Roberts was appointed Chief Justice by George W. Bush. I'm not saying politics is clean and honest. I'm saying they're all playing games. They're all fighting for power. And Donald Trump's not going to walk away from this. And he may have lined up his chips, his pieces on the board so that just when you think you've won, he makes that move and you go, wait a minute, I didn't see that. How did you? That's right. Take it seriously. As much as I can say over and over again, I think it's going to be a Joe Biden presidency and the media is calling him president-elect. It's not over. It's not by a long shot. We'll see how things play out. But Trump has already got 1 legal victory in Pennsylvania, many more defeats. I don't know what's going to happen. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.